right, so real quick, before I bring on the panel, I'm just gonna, do what I need to do. So who the fuck is Allison? That's me. I'm going to moderate this panel. Apart from doing that today, 7 years ago, I was actually a keynote speaker at Struktur. I was the first speaker on day one for an hour long and had major imposter syndrome and was super nervous and scared. I don't feel too bad right now, so that's good. But at that time, I designed my keynote to speak as little as possible. So I spoke for 15 minutes. I brought people on stage. I broke the entire audience into groups, made them workshop, and then went around like Sally, Jesse, Raphael, and all right, what did you guys figure out? So when Michelle asked me, do you want to come moderate a panel? I think it's because she knew if she asked me to do a keynote, I would have fucked it up and basically just done the same thing again. So thank you, Michelle, for inviting me here. So what do I do? So I'm a creative director. I started my own brand consultancy called Yesterday.rip in 2020. Again, at the beginning of the pandemic, just kind of realizing, again, today is all about reinvention and wanting to design the way that I wanted to design and design experiences that way. And my motto, my ethos is work hard, work efficiently so you have more time to fuck around. And what I do in my fuck around time is screen print and snowboard and do art and play music, just all those things mixed together. I'm gonna go fast because I want these guys to come up. So what the fuck am I gonna do next? I've got some people who are gonna hand out some things to you. Oh, there they are. So I brought everyone just a notebook and a pen because while Michelle and I were brainstorming this panel, we had all kinds of people potentially on it, and our A team, our best team, the best people that we wanted to get, all said fucking yes, and they're all here, and you're gonna get insights from 4 people, get into the minds of these 4 people, and I wanna make sure that you all had a pen and some paper to write that. So what I'm gonna do next is moderate the shit out of this panel, and also some of the work that I do is social impact, I'm gonna keep working yesterday and do good stuff. I fucked up that pitch. So fuck yesterday, that's what this idea of reinvention is all about. Oh, I'm realizing the prompter doesn't work, so I'm gonna have to read it like this. So the idea of fuck yesterday, that's my approach to, oh, thanks, they turned it on. This is how I like to think about reinvention, how to think about creativity, whether that's music or art or design. Just the approach of what was true yesterday doesn't have to be true today or tomorrow. You can change anything at any point. And this was inspired by the Ezra Pound quote, "Make it new," which is the idea of set words free from syntax, notes from traditional harmonies, and color and line from perspective. Dramatic works can become musical, and music becomes visual, and visual writings become sculptural. So basically the act of pulling things apart and smashing them back together in new and unexpected ways and experiences. So what I'm going to bring all these lovely people up on stage to help talk about is the role of curiosity, chaos, and courage to help and make newness. Find and make newness. Awesome. Jeanine, come on up, please. All right. Please sit right next to me. Ease my nerves. So Jeanine, I've actually known Jeanine for a long time, right? Quite a long time. So I have seen firsthand Jeanine's work and approach to unlocking human truths and insights and trends and all that good stuff. So Jeanine really understands what the world needs before the world even knows they need it. Is how I like to think of you. Anyway, boom, David Letterman style. All right, next I want to invite Greg up. Yeah, cheer on Greg. So I've heard Greg describe himself as a composer and decomposer, creating audio experiences across the spectrum, from film to video games, ambiance to death metal. So Greg, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Excellent. Woo. Oh, I need to, yeah. Oh,
You have to have gray
here.
hair to be on this
How about
panel.
you click for me?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Let's go.
Okay, yeah.
Teamwork. All right, J-Lu, come on up. So, J-Lu, experimenter, curious, wanting to understand how humans tick, and she loves getting into the discomfort zone head first to learn and build new things. They'll all intro themselves again too, but that's our next person. And then Bob, the multidisciplinary mashup king from product to design to branding, always with a balance of what it and yeah, a real risk taker, wild guy. All right. Here we go. Thanks, everyone.
Want that back?
I do.
Okay.
Thanks. If I need you, I'll let you know. Okay. Great. So I've got 9 questions for everyone. What I'd love to do, I'll go through and ask them, then have you, Jeanine, start, and we'll go down to Greg, and then we'll bring it all the way back. Bob, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just checking the questions.
Okay. Oh, no, I'll
Got them all.
I'm gonna
Okay.
go. Let's do.
Let's go.
all right, go for it.
Want to be prepared.
Great. Thanks to everyone for being here. Thank you for your generosity and knowledge. And let's jump right in. So our first question is about pivots. And again, today we've been talking about reinvention and all that good stuff. So each one of us here have made pretty big career moves in the past few years. So starting with you, Jeanine, tell us what you're doing and what initiated that change for you.
Yes. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Really grateful to be back with the crew, IRL. I've been missing everyone at Struktur. I am Jeanine Pesce. I'm the founder and creative director of Range. It's a creative consulting agency that is dedicated to the active outdoor and lifestyle markets. I founded it in 2012 after about 10 years working as a trend forecaster in the fashion industry, and I've always specialized in the outdoor and active space. In the early iterations of Range, we published a magazine. I published 11 issues of a print magazine. That was really fun. And over the years, I've consulted big brands and little brands, emerging brands, disruptive brands, kind of anyone who's interested in the intersection of design and performance. So it's been really fun and exciting. And I guess my big pivot has been that I kind of, the pandemic gave me an opportunity to really take stock, and I think that's a theme we're all revisiting, like that pause, and to really reevaluate the way I was working and who I was working with and the resources that I was giving out to my clients and the kind of clients I was working with. That really came into focus, and I decided that I wanted to focus on degrowth, and actually I hit a ceiling where it became a little too much for me to handle on my own. So I made a really conscious effort to actually unbundle my agency and start to find more collaborators. And I reached out to some other women that I admired in the industry that were doing similar work and approached them to become partners and kind of developed a new agency experience that was more about collaboration than competition, and bringing the work I do, which is insight and trend, to the work they do, which is more digital marketing and campaign development. And it's been a really nice opportunity to collaborate. Yeah,
That's awesome.
So that's me.
Awesome. Degrowth and collaboration. I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Greg? What's going on and what initiated any recent change?
So I'm Greg Brace. I'm a live musician, composer, been playing in bands and writing music for, the last couple decades or so, I'd say. And so, yeah, I mean, just in terms of where things have gone recently, a couple decades ago, I was studying composition and music. And so, I didn't really have the opportunity to really pick that up. So as far as for where I'm at now, I would say that, the pandemic gave me the opportunity to pick that up, since I really was just kind of going forward with more collaborating in bands and so forth. But right around the time that the pandemic hit, one of my main collaborators had a kid, so he's super busy, and he also works in a grocery store, so he was doing the front lines during the pandemic thing. So that situation made me really have to rethink things quite a bit. So yeah, I really just started to be able to pick up more on just kind of working as a composer on my own. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just expanding out in that range.
Yeah, that idea of going solo again, like finding yourself
Yeah,
again. Super
yeah.
cool.
Just getting out there like that, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you, Jaylu.
Hi, I'm Jaylu Nee. I'm a senior designer at Evolve Collaborative. We're an insights, design, and innovation company based here in Portland, Oregon. This is my first structure, so like a couple of other people, I feel nervous. Maybe you can hear my heart beating through the mic. But yeah, so Evolve was actually my first job coming out of school after graduating. My background's in industrial design. And when you sent this question along about big changes, and it's been now 5 years. I started as an intern, now I'm a senior designer. I think the interesting thing is that I think throughout the last couple of years, I see my peers changing companies, moving jobs, changing roles, and a lot of the time I found myself thinking, should I be doing that too? And that word "should" is kind of a dangerous word, right? You talked about all of the conversations with your therapist. That's definitely a conversation I had with my therapist. The things that we think we should be doing.
Don't shit all over yourself.
Yeah, that's a good one. Get a t-shirt of that. And to your point of taking stock, Jeanine, I think it's also a radical move to kind of take stock of where you are and recognize I do really love what I'm doing. I still have more work to do here, and I think it's a radical act to stay as well and continue, growing more deeply, like you're talking about.
It makes me think a little earlier of, one of our speakers talking about finding new plateaus, and when you hit a plateau, then it's time to move, and if you're still on that acceleration, it's like, why fuck that up?
Yeah.
How about you, Bob?
Oh, hey. How many, just curious, I see a lot of faces here that are at the thing last night, but how many people were not at the thing last night? So, okay, I just don't want to repeat my lines. Because I have a thing I do, and I don't want to do that if you've heard it already. So, Bob Smith, I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck I do. I like making things. I like creating things. I love working with people. Real quick, like I was at Nike for 11 years. I started sportswear when I was there, left, went to Pendleton, worked with them for a while, did a lot of branding work for them. Worked for tennis, did design apparel for New Balance. I did tennis apparel for them for 5 years. Left that to start my own thing with Oracle Sportswear, which I loved doing, but I also realized I didn't love running the business. But it was all, that was kind of my big, what if I did this thing? It's like, oh, that's what happens when you do that. So in the middle of all of that, or recently, a few years ago, I met Adrian, who's sitting down there. And we were kind of holed up during the pandemic, and we were both trying to figure out, what our next act was going to be. And she got a job offer to go move down to Los Angeles, which is where I was born. So after living in Oregon for over 40 years, the kids are grown. There's nothing really, because of remote working, I can pretty much do what I do from anywhere. So hey, let's move to LA. So we did that a year ago, and I'm like now looking at new opportunities down there, and just trying to drink in the sunshine, the surf, and just enjoy my life, and try to figure out kind of what my next act is. So,
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that idea of like just always constantly still figuring it out.
well, I just it's kind of funny because my talk last night was literally titled "The Great Resignation," and I thought about like God, I've quit so many jobs. You know what I mean? So I'm probably on my 5th or 6th career by now. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like when people think they have it figured out, that's when like
Yeah,
those
I don't know if
folks
it's
like,
necessary to make that definition, frankly.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wonderful. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. All right, well, next question. So now with, after the pandemic, et cetera, and thinking back to everything that we've pivoted or continued going on to, think back, a few years. Is there anything you wish you could tell your day one self? So maybe right, or like after the internship, what do you wish you could go tell yourself? Or Jeanine, after you founded Range, what could you go back and tell your day one self?
I would say to define your own version of success, because we are all fed this idea of like what success is. And in reality, it's usually not realistic. Especially when I started my business, it was kind of the very beginnings of like the girl boss movement and leaning in and all of you can have it all. And like, that's actually total bullshit. If you can't have it all, like, especially if you're a woman and you have a family, and not to gender it, but like, this idea of a work-life balance, which was actually a term that was coined in the 80s in the UK for the women's liberation movement, which was meant to kind of have us, I don't know, reconcile the fact that like men weren't held to the same standard as women were when we were trying to have families and also have careers at the same time. And I've always been like, what's my version of success? And I used to think it was growth and being a girl boss and like being the CEO and like having the fancy office and the money. And I realized that I kind of had to be like a psycho to do that, like working 24/7, like obsessed with work, not having any personality outside of work. And I come from like an immigrant family where like your worth is defined by your work. So that was very much wrapped up in my own identity as well. You know, the busy hustle culture, like I really defined myself by that. And I burnt out. And I wasn't showing up as like the best version of myself for my family, for my husband, for my daughter. And I just realized at a certain point that like that was all bullshit and I didn't want it. So kind of leading me to that degrowth and trying to find partners and asking for help and those things that are really hard for women to do, because we need to embody this very masculine idea of what work is and what success in business looks like. So defining your own version of success.
Excellent. What about you, Greg?
For me, I would say, act on inspiration. Don't wait. I feel like, I've experienced that where you're like, oh, I'll have time to do things, and so I'll take a little bit of time. But I would say go for that. Go after it. If you feel it,
Fuck yeah.
work towards what you feel passionate about when you feel that passion, because you never know what things are going to be like coming up, towards the future there. So I guess that's about all I can think of at this point.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, you do.
Yeah, we engage with students a lot, and so I am often thinking about, the advice that I would give to my past self. I think one of the big ones that I've been thinking about a lot lately, too, especially in a way working more in isolation as we're remote now, is just to lean on your peers and to share your work. I think especially for me when I was a student and a young designer, I still think of myself as a young designer. I think I was very self-conscious and afraid to put stuff out there if I didn't feel like it was perfect, if it wasn't, something I was proud of yet. But so much happens in that magic moment, right? It's always better when you have more eyes on it, and especially a diverse set of eyes. And so I think, that would be the advice that I would give.
I agree with you 100%. I have what I wanted to say. It's funny because Charles, asshole, last night asked me, like, if you could give advice to yourself, like, your 20-year-old self, what would it be? And I had to think about it for a second, but absolutely at the time, last night, I was thinking, just slow down and observe and really think about, like, because I'm so reactionary, and a lot of this is just all the comorbidities of being who I am and the ADD and whatever. But just take that extra moment and really think about, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. What I love about what you're talking about is like there's never been a time when I've collaborated with somebody else where it hasn't made the product better, or at least my process better, right? So I had to fire a client a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a good fit, and I've done that before. But what I attempted to do that time. Again, this is like stopping, like, well, what's my intention? What's my outcome from all this? And I really wanted to preserve the relationship, right? It wasn't a good fit, and that didn't make them wrong and me right. It just meant it wasn't a good fit. So I really took some time to think about how the words I used when I broke the relationship, right? And it made a huge, and the note I got back from him was like, yes, I can't wait to see you again. It was what I had hoped for, but not what I was used to.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if I had done what my first impulse was like that, implying "fuck you, go find someone else," that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So definitely taking that extra beat and pausing and really thinking it through, I think has been really, really valuable for me. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So defining your success. It's okay to not have it all because you can't fucking have it all. Yeah. Act when the inspiration comes, leaning on your peers and fuck perfection, and then slowing down and observing. Very cool. All good insights in hindsight. Next question. This one's more around process. So if you had to sum up your approach to process or to creativity, what would it be and why? Like just the way you do it.
You just revealed your Canadianness by saying
I know.
process. American. I would say my personal process is, and Sveti will understand, obsession and immersion. The nature of the work that I do in trend and strategy and insights is to fully immerse myself in the work to a point where I almost like, it's not healthy, which I'm trying to also manage some relationships and boundaries with that, but just really getting into the mindset of whatever the project is I'm doing and going deep, like head in like it looks like the FBI like mapping when you're like chasing a criminal where you've just got like Post-its and strings and all the things, but like getting myself fully immersed like in the skin of whatever my client or the consumer of the project or the work is I'm doing. A lot like what Angela was talking about with her students, like I loved that. I thought that was so brilliant. Good. And another really interesting way to talk about, getting in that mindset.
Awesome. What about you, Greg?
Well, I would say, as an example in music, if my main instrument is guitar, so in terms of the process of coming up with ideas, I may really fixate on the very first thing that I come up with and try to make one instrument be really either intricately built or just, really built out or something like that. And that's one way I'm comfortable with working. But then I'm really intrigued by taking a different approach, which might be, it's just interesting to take these different approaches, like starting with something that it doesn't really grab you is I'm fascinated by that. Like you could have just a really simple idea that you're just like, oh, this is nothing, but then the layers that come about and the iterations too.
Yeah.
Could be. But another interesting thing is the collaboration side of that, where you may be on your own working and I don't really know if this is good. I'm really into the idea, but somebody else's, the sounding board idea could really, that I've relied on that from time to time, quite
I
a
would
bit.
think especially with music.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So
especially in a traditional band setting where you're
right.
bouncing ideas off each other and
yeah. So that it's an interesting thing to explore. So I love that it's really open that way, and going out of your comfort zone in some way too, and trying to find what am I really used to doing. So let's do something a little different, or that approach. So yeah.
Great.
Cool. Yeah, I think my approach to creativity or process is definitely people-centered. If I had to sum it up, short and sweet, I think especially in the way that we work at Evolve, within our own team, we're small, we're 14 people, and so we're very collaborative within our own studio, but also with clients, we bring them in. For those of you who attended the workshop yesterday, you got a taste of what that is like. But we really love having people as a part of every process, and I think the thing that stands out to me most too is especially the people that we're designing for, including them in the process and centering them. Something I mentioned yesterday is that everything we do is insight-driven, and I always think of one of my first big programs when I joined Evolve full-time. We were working for a client who is a health insurance provider, and we were helping them design a program to help people build healthier habits. And so through that process, we traveled across the US and spoke to their members to understand, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, sat across from them at their kitchen tables. And that's really what drove the design. And I remember coming back from that trip and feeling like I was designing for someone like my mom, who she raised me and my twin sister as a single mother. And, she didn't have time to think about her own health. She didn't have necessarily like the financial freedom to be able to buy us organic foods all the time either. And so, being able to design something within those kinds of constraints that are so real, I think that's where I can be my most creative.
Interesting. It's like, when you mentioned immersion, I feel like that, to me, like that's definitely the name of the game for me. It's like almost to an obnoxious degree. Like, pity my poor partner when I take on a new project with someone new because like, oh, I'm all about Japanese now. You'll learn. Yeah. But I think it's funny because as a designer, is Jason still here? He talked about design being like empathic, and it's like that is like I don't want to show up like an outsider when I'm working on a solution or design or something like that. Having said that, if I just do what has always been done, then that's of no value either. So it's kind of an interesting balance between learning the language, but also bringing something new to the conversation.
Yeah.
So, but I do believe it does start with definitely like you kind of have to like live in the culture. Especially and it's most obvious in places like in skate or any of these tribe cultures where you can tell in a heartbeat when someone new comes in, they don't know what they're talking about. You're talking at the consumer rather than with them. So that to me is terrifying. That I feel like I don't want to be that. I don't. So I really try to really immerse myself. I'm curious because I don't know if you shared this with the group, but like you said, like you listen to a song over and over and over again for weeks.
I've done it for months.
How do you pick that song, and what does that have to do with the client? And what's the most recent song you were listening to?
Oh gosh. The most recent song was a Sia song. So yeah, just to give some context, process-wise, and thinking about like getting your mind into the zone. What do you do? It's a question a little bit later, but something that I do is I'll listen to a song over and over and over again because then all thoughts of like, oh, what am I making for dinner? What do I have to do? Everything goes away and it just gets focused into a trance.
Yeah.
And I've done that for projects, again, just for hyper focus.
Sure. Yeah.
But I like traveled to Japan for 2 months solo and listened to one song the entire time. It was Terrible Love by The National. And now every time, it's a really great song, but every time I hear it now, I'm in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I can see it, smell it, taste it.
I listen to the Tron soundtrack exclusively.
To what?
The Tron soundtrack produced by Tron. They're like
You do this too?
Very loud. It's either Nick Cave or Tron, and that's it. And when I'm writing or ideating for over a decade, it's the only things that I listen to when I'm writing or like coming up with ideas.
Allison, you look relieved.
I feel so heard right now.
Yeah. It's literally it. Tron or Nick Cave, and that's it.
I saw Nick Cave it was so good, like 2 weeks ago.
In New York.
In New York.
I had tickets to go and canceled during COVID. But
Yeah, I think I do kind of that with films. I don't really. I mean, I'll fixate on some songs, but since I'm doing music,
it's your business.
That's right. Yeah, so I might really fixate on certain films and just watch it over and over. That's kind of the way I do things.
I feel like $1 million right now.
What's my song? Well, I don't have a song. Oh, God damn you. Okay, it's why can't I? It's a Miles Davis song. It's been covered. It's called Nardis. Okay, right. Dun dun.
I was gonna say Taylor Swift,
and it's just like I've been listening to it literally for 15 years. Bill Evans, like it's just like my go-to, right? Which just confirms what I believe. One of my personal maxims is a little OCD goes a long way. Right.
Yeah, definitely. Use it for good, for sure. Bob, we'll start with you. How about let's talk a bit about curiosity, and I'm thinking especially during frickin' COVID, where we're all stuck at home, that kind of thing. I know every person here is incredibly and inspiringly curious, so I'm curious, how do you feed your curiosity?
Do I manifest it, or how do I?
How do you feed your curiosity?
It's funny because I literally just signed a contract. I was going to be doing tennis apparel for Yonex, so I'm back in the tennis game again. And I remember when they were interviewing me, and these questions are all like the exploratory. I've heard this question over and over and over again from them. Like, what's your process? What's your creative process? Or how long? And I was like, it's not something I start or stop. And I'm pretty sure this is common among all designers and creatives. It's just always on. You just kind of focus the light on a different area of the room. But I actually had a really good friend of mine once upon described it to me. He said, you just have to be, you just have to read a lot, right? And you're just always like, what's around that corner? What? And Jason touched on this, and like, I'm really interested in the why people do what they do, right? And I've heard also described like people don't, and this is like with a brand, like you don't buy what they make, you buy why they make it, right? And so I'm really obsessed with that why, like right, like for example, when I was working on New Balance tennis several years ago, and they hadn't been making tennis, and the reason that they were getting into tennis was because it was tennis and football, soccer are great ways to get into international markets, and that's what they were trying to do. So fine for you, but as a consumer, why the fuck do I care that there's another tennis brand in the world? I don't, right? Why do I care? So, we have to go to work and try to figure out what the why was there. And what we ultimately dug out was that New Balance is based in Boston. New England is kind of like the cradle of US-based tennis. You have the Tennis Hall of Fame is in Newport. You have Forest Hills in New York. So it's like, oh, okay, so New England. So we like literally branded New Balance as the New England tennis. We said New Balance is New England tennis. Now we have a why.
Yeah.
And that informed our visual language. That informed the way we communicated, right? So, and if you're just kind of looking for the next pastiche or the next style, you're going to miss that. So being obviously interested, leads to curiosity. But like I think the curiosity is like just being like being interested is I feel like kind of the root of all this, right?
How about you, J. Lou? How do you feed your curiosity?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, kind of understanding like why people do the things they
that's
do.
what you were exactly what you were talking about when you were talking about the trip you took, right?
Yeah, so I love listening to podcasts and reading books about behavioral economics, which sounds really technical, but is just essentially that. Yeah. And then besides that, I think I've always thought of myself as kind of a lifelong learner. And so that curiosity kind of, I feed that in different ways, just picking up almost a different hobby every year, every season, I feel like. So I play guitar. I mentioned that in the last piano we talked about. I picked up, spoon carving. I've recently been really into like skateboarding and bouldering. And I think it's just that act of learning something new gives you resilience, right? Like you get used to not doing it right the first time, or potentially the second time, or the 10th time. And I think that I see that coming back into my design work too, because it kind of gives me the mindset to keep pushing through and keep looking at, what am I learning from this that I can carry through to the next time.
The pushing through, I think it's important to stick with that, because that's, it's funny because as a designer, you want to be good at what you do. I hate being bad at anything. But then you also have this idea of curiosity and learning, and then how do you reconcile those two things? And I think that's that's kind of the fulcrum right there, is sticking with it and letting it see where it goes, right?
Yeah, we talk about the shit zone at Evolve.
Yeah.
You just got to get through the shit zone.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I would add like keeping the momentum going for me. I think if you have to start and stop, it kind of can, really stall like the innovation of what you're going for, the curiosity. I just like things to keep going in that sense. Pretty much that, but just keeping at it, keeping going.
It's a little different process for me because the work I do is very extractive. My job is usually to come up with really, really big, groundbreaking, profound ideas that will shape the trajectory of a brand for the next 5 to 10 years. So that's just not easy to come up with. And like everyone here, I'm, visual stimulation, obviously like travel, design trips, museums, that kind of thing, which obviously is all offline during COVID. So I tried a new technique where I just tried to let my mind wander more. And I put my phone down more, and I stopped listening to podcasts, and I started to just get more sleep. And I started to actually solve problems in my sleep and have these great ideas and profound ideas while I was literally resting. And I'm not great at meditation. I've always tried to commit to a meditation practice, but I've never really been able to see it through. So I found that when I started sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night and stopped stressing myself out about information and absorbing it and compartmentalizing it and organizing it, I actually started having better ideas. And so I would just keep a notebook next to my bed. And if I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt inspired for an hour, I would write what those ideas were without beating myself up. you're awake, you're supposed to be sleeping. Like, you've got to get up at 6, you have a family and things to do. So like I kind of like started reading my own rhythms, like circadian and infradian rhythms, and like started syncing those up with my creative process, and that helped a little bit more. But I mean, that's also like a luxury that we don't have unless we're really in a pandemic and you get to work from home and you're not on the road all the time. So I'm like, you know, we're all entering back into these like these pre-COVID routines of travel, like getting on airplanes and seeing people and being responsible to show up as your full self. I'm trying to find ways to temper that, but just not being so hard on myself if I can't be curious in the moment, or like if I'm reading something and dozing off, I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah. I love the spectrum of it. We never turn it off, but you have to turn it off.
Consciously turning it off.
Yes.
Like consciously.
Yes.
Like self-care in ways.
Like resting my brain in order to like rehabilitate it in a weird way.
You mentioned meditation. That's something that I started to do since the pandemic, or just in the last year, and that's been huge. Excellent way to just take care of yourself and get better ideas, more ideas. Be really balanced. The self-care side of it, definitely.
Amazing. Awesome. So this next question is about when you are sleeping and you wake up like a zombie and write something down, and then you reread it in the morning. This is all about the idea of how do you know when you've hit on something really, really good, really, really new, and you're like, holy shit, this is like, that's the one that they're going to pick, or that's the song that's like, whoa, or that's the piece that I need to start building on. How do you know when you've hit on the shit?
Yeah.
Jeanine.
It's very physical for me. Like, I feel it. I'm like, whoa, like I have this like aha moment. And just because of the work I do and how much I'm looking at and analyzing constantly, I can kind of tell you when something new has changed in the market for like the last 20 years. Like, I can tell you the first time there was color used in a wetsuit. I can literally tell you the first women's silhouette that was developed in the outdoor industry, because I've been watching it methodically like a psycho for the last 2 decades. So when I feel something new in my bones or see it for the first time, it clicks and I get like goosebumps.
Yeah.
And it's probably a gut and an instinct and an intuition that most designers have, right? You have that moment of like
The bolt.
it hits you, like, and you can't really ignore it. So that's how it works for me.
I'm so excited to hear now on the music side. What are we
Yeah, I
thinking?
mean, I concur with that. It's the same thing. I think, really, I don't know if I have much to add to that, because it is like you feel it, and that's the biggest part of it, is that you just, like, you get that sense to dive deep, and like a sense of relief too, in that kind of stress of trying to be creative, definitely that.
Yeah, and I would imagine for music too, something about knowing the past real fucking good. That when you see something that you have never seen before, when you hear something that you have never heard before.
Right, yeah. I mean, in a way too, I think that has to do only with you. Like, because you can get really caught up in other people's perspectives of like, oh, there was this and there was that and all that. Also that said though, being educated about things, so, and going through that process so you know what's there, where to break the rules by knowing that. So it's a little bit of both of those things, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes the best solution is the simplest solution. I think when I'm ideating, I think even on projects at home, I can tend to, my first idea is usually the most complicated way to do something.
Occam's razor.
Yeah, exactly. And something we talked about yesterday during the workshop was this idea of 100 to 1. So, out of 100 ideas, if you come up with 100 ideas, there's bound to be at least one good one in there. And so for us, it's kind of being able to explore everything and then reevaluate and see what's really, standing out.
Wonderful.
It's so succinct. These are great. The reason I know these are great questions is because I have like 4 answers for everything you're asking. So I'll try to just pick one. But one of the design classes I have taken, I was saying last night, I'd be shocked if I had like 8 credit hours of college to my name. But one of the design classes I did take, the professor was really great. He said, like, you are the sum total of your knowledge. So the more the source material that you put up here, the more conjugations you can make, right? And the more diverse that is, the more what the more interesting your solutions would be, and that all, of course, feeds right back into curiosity. But I can remember like exactly as described here. It's like it definitely is a bolt, and it almost feels like, for a second, maybe even in music, I have enough musicians friends who've thought this like, doesn't this already exist, right? It feels inevitable. You know what I mean? And then you go, oh, like, and you're like, hasn't somebody already done this? And you look around and like, God, no. And that's when like right? You're like, shit, okay, cool, right? That's what it feels like to me. I remember when I was at Nike and I'd been working, what was I doing? I was working on some lifestyle stuff, and I was really focused on the why of Nike. And it was definitely like there's something going on in Oregon where like you have the U of O, you have that track program, you have White and Kennedy. It was like, why is all this happening here in Portland, Oregon, of all places where I grew up? Couldn't figure it out. Long story short, it was like, it'd be really cool. And I love collaboration. It was like, I had an idea for a collaboration. It was like, what? I love things that don't feel like they fit at first, and you bring them together and they make a new thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if Pendleton got together with Nike? So Pendleton is low tech, old school, Western wear, Indian, and Nike's all about pushing that. What if we brought them together? And now you have this Oregon story, but it's still about innovation. It's still about these relationships. And by the way, that can also feed back into the benefit. The beneficiary will be the American Indian College Fund. Right, so we have like this. It kind of wrapped it all up, and I was just like, and I just got tremors thinking about how cool it could be. Right, it didn't happen to I left, but it ultimately, as we all know, came to fruition later. But those are the kind of things where you just kind of go, just kind of having all the pieces, and then somehow they all kind of land together, and you have a new thing, and it's such a fun process to be a part of.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Next. Actually, I'm going to skip that one. I feel like we already talked about it. I want to hear about your rituals. So my listening to a song over and over and again, that's my like.
Oh, that's where that came from.
That's,
right?
yeah, like when
Right.
I need to get into the zone, I will put on a single song and, get through a project, and then years later when I hear that song, I think of that work. Like it's all this weird kind of memory making through sound. But I would like to ask each of you, do you have one weird or not weird, like secret ritual that just gets you creative to see if, something I want to borrow from you?
I mean, in addition to the sound and
Which
the songs,
I feel heard. Again.
I think like honoring my cycles and my rhythms, and like I know that I work best from 5 to 8:30. 9 before school starts for my daughter. Like that's my flow time, and I can't work at night. I'm terrible at night, and I'm useless after about 4. So like anything that has to really be done with intention, whether it's research or writing, I do it between 5 to 8:30, and I feel accomplished. And then I can kind of go through the rest of my day, even if I'm not maybe like achieving the same like level of profound impact in the way I'm thinking throughout the rest of the day. At least I know I got that morning session in that makes me feel like I've like less stress, like I've gotten closer to whatever the problem I'm trying to solve is, and then I can come back the next morning and pick it back up again.
How about you?
Yeah, it's funny. My ex-brother-in-law, I guess he is now, a friend of mine, used to say his first name is, or his middle name is Discipline. Unfortunately, his first name is No. And I feel like that pretty much describes me. So my rituals are I need to remind myself that I have availed, like to calm down, pause, kind of clear the decks, clean, procrastinate, like which right, clean things up, and like what I've realized over the years is that is kind of my ritual for preparing to you're kind of preparing the soil. Mm-hmm. Right, and so I like to start with a clean desk, and that's kind of like again that.
Do you do the dishes also?
What's that?
Do you do the dishes also?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do that too.
Fucking house
and
is
I have to have the house spotless before I can get into it.
Spotless. Bed is made.
I love clean procrastination.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of I've realized over the years that's kind of my ritual. Is kind of getting that's how I'm preparing, clearing my mind physically. Through all these activities.
And you're taking care of shit.
Yeah,
all your chores are done.
Shit gets taken care of.
Fuck yeah. But you, Jeanine.
Yeah, I mentioned climbing before. I think that's one thing lately that has gotten me in a really good headspace to create. I think, in the ways that I've talked about in terms of just, getting in the right frame of mind for problem solving. And then I think the other thing that's really great for creativity is this rule that we used in the workshop yesterday, yes and, the classic improv rule. Yeah, so, being able to draw a line between, right now we're generating ideas and everything goes. And so, as adults, we're so programmed to say, no, not this, this won't work, find a way to reason out of it. So I think that yes and rule is really great, especially when we're collaborating together and building on each other's
Yeah, have you heard this thought? I'm sure you have. I'm going to clumsily describe it. It was like white hat thinking, black hat thinking, right? So so it goes something like this. For 15 minutes, all we're going to do is just blow smoke up each other's asses, right? All we're going to do is talk about how great our ideas are, right? And right, you do that, and you cannot, right? There's no, right? And then you spend some time, and I'm not sure what the time limits are on these, but then you go, okay, now we're going to pivot. Now we're going to critically look at these ideas, right? And then right, but I guess the point is you're protecting that time of creation. You're not editing yet. We're just throwing ideas out, right? And that's actually an improv trick you're talking about. Now, actually, I've been thinking about that while we've been sitting here. Like someone says something, yes, and you keep it going. You keep it going, right? And I think that's a really valuable skill.
Yeah. Your next panel idea.
Excellent.
Yes and.
Yes and.
Yeah.
Yes and.
Yeah, no
Of
fucking,
course.
no fucking.
Oh my God, right?
Fucking yesterday. Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that, just keeping it going like that, exploding out with your ideas and just letting it go anywhere. And then, there's also the idea of the compost of it, of just everything coming, but growing back up out. I think I heard that from Neil Gaiman. He did Coraline.
Yeah.
He's the writer. Anyway, but that's a great way to look at it, because we all have stuff that hits the cutting room floor, as it were, right? In creative, just so much stuff. Then, and the collaboration too, all that stuff. So that really kind of kicks in for me.
Well, again, I can't talk about jazz without my girlfriend rolling her eyes at me, but I feel like that's a very musical thing, right?
Yeah.
Supporting, listening,
Active
right?
listening.
Active listening. Well, that's what I love about what you're doing. You're taking notes, and your EQ is off the fucking charts, Allison. Like you're reading back, right? You're supporting. It's just like, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, making me shy. I love this idea of compost. I have never thought of this as a metaphor for what we were talking about, taking things that don't belong together, them coming together to create this brown slop that's a brand new thing that's going to do good things.
That's a great thing to have. I mean, I think in terms of collaboration, one of the things I think musically what's worked well is when you have all of the stuff you're doing. Let's say I'm just kind of riffing on a guitar. If there's somebody else there, they can just be like, oh, wait, what was that?
What was that?
If you have somebody that you're feeding your ideas to, then they're going to direct something that makes you think totally differently about what you were doing. And vice versa, you could do that for somebody else. That whole thing is another part of that.
It's like they hear it in a different way. The same thing, but they hear it filtered through
right.
their,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Or someone who can be egoless enough of yo, what you just did, that was great, and I don't want you to drop that.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. I don't see a timer, so we're already over.
Oh. We've been out of time since we started.
Yeah, the timer didn't work. All right. Okay. These are probably two very quick, sign-off answers, I believe. So the first one's about aspiration. We're all here together. We're all here to learn from each other. Generosity of knowledge. Fuck yeah, we haven't been able to do this for 2 years. So I want to ask each of you, what are your future aspirations, and how can we all help?
I want to work less.
That's so valid.
I
That's
just want to
wonderful.
work less because I work more than I should, and I think we all do, right? Even through the pandemic, we all worked hard, even though work was different for everybody and it looked different. We all just persevered and developed new rituals and new habits and new ways of getting creative, and maybe we just need a little rest. That's all.
Awesome.
That's okay too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm working towards just being more like a media composer. So going from being maybe more of an underground musician or performing live, which I still want to keep doing. I want to get more into sharing my work creatively with different mediums.
Metaverse.
Yeah,
You're gonna need
exactly.
fucking music
Getting
in
out
there.
there with that is probably the main thing I would say. And just network building, expanding out, who I work with, making relationships more with, serious working professionals in all that range of the mediums there, the metaverse and everything else.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I would love to see more equity in design. Maybe that doesn't quite fit this
Yes,
question.
it does.
But yeah, I want to echo everything that Angela Medlin said in her presentation earlier. I think especially for us here in Portland, we know by the numbers it is an incredibly white city. But more and more, I'm seeing spaces that are for people of color, that are for AAPI folks, that are for queer folks. Spaces that are for me and for those intersections of my identity too. And so I think as much as we can keep growing that, especially within the design community, within the music industry, wherever we have influence, it's thinking about what are the things that we can contribute, what can we share, whether that's dollars or time or knowledge or space. But yeah, I think our industries really need to change.
100%. I love how. Are you done?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to step on your toes, but I loved how one of the presentations today was like diversity enhances design or something along those lines. And I was like, how can it not? And we're literally cutting ourselves off from all these different points of view and innovations by like the status quo, by keeping the status quo. So I love the idea of that. All night, all morning, I'm like, yes, more of that, more of that, more of that, more of that.
And then let's figure out what to do.
Well, right, and then what do we do with that, right? Knowledge is power, but action, nothing happens with action. Having said all that, it almost feels selfish to say this now because I feel like we're also like, yes, let's move forward together. But I feel like I've been thought of myself as a technician for so long, and I'd like to be I'd like to move more towards getting paid for what I know versus what I do. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I've always thought of myself as just like, the guy who does the work. I was like, when Michelle started asking me to be a part of these things, I realized it wasn't, there's, plenty of people, like really amazing portfolios, right? But it's not about, for me, I don't feel like that's part of my value, but also my experience, my empathy, right? And being and really wanting to see other people rise. You know what I mean? Like when people, like I was saying last night, my favorite scene in any movie is the airport scene in Love Actually, where everybody's hugging and like meeting each other and coming together. And I cry like a baby every time I see that scene because the empathy, right? It's like I love the human experience. And so the more I get to share that with other people, I feel like that helps other people, but also I just can't get enough of that. So I'd like to do more of that.
Got it. And then our last question, I've called it nugs, so little nuggets, golden nuggets of truth or thoughts or ethos, just your approach. Let's pretend it's the first line of your obituary. That's very negative. I'm sorry, I don't mean that. But earlier I said work hard, work efficient, so you have more time to fuck around or sleep 10 hours a night.
10 hours a night.
That's kind of mine. So I'm curious for each of you, just what's the one thing from your mind to ours?
I think we just don't have to do business the way we've always done business. Like the way we've been taught to do business is rooted in these very dated, very toxic, masculine ideas about business and success and structures. And I don't believe that needs to be the case. I believe that we can be successful and empathetic and human all at the same time. And Adrian told me I'm the youngest or the oldest member of the Gen Z cohort because I'm constantly like, fuck the system and damn the man. But I really believe all of that. We can unbundle and rebuild new systems that serve us and serve humanity and not just the bottom line and the corporations that we work for. So, and say business as usual, out. There's a war going on right now.
Yes.
And we're all expected to show up and climate change and conflict and the pandemic and it just takes a huge emotional toll on people. So, yeah, business as usual, out the window.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, I would say embrace chaos and change, that's where the good stuff is. You got to get in there and get kind of dirty and, make a mess and get through, pretty much that. Yeah.
I'd say be patient and be kind to yourself. A lot of us have talked about this in different ways already. I think especially for the people of color in the room, and especially as things are changing, very quickly right now as we return back to the office and things like that. And then the other thing that I would say too is just have fun, keep loving what you're doing. I think that's super important.
Yep. Oh God, that's something I was going to say that was really, really profound. Now I can't remember what it was. Yeah, sure it was. No. I can't go there. Nuggets. So for me, I guess. I know what it was. One of the things I love about the slap was how it at the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Is how it really it wasn't. Yeah, there was a lot of the usual suspects in terms of reaction, but what I loved about it was to me, the greatest sin of all that was this. It was such a masculine thing to do. It was like ownership. Mm-hmm. I'm going to protect my woman, right? And it just exposed the utter bullshit of this patriarchy, and the way things have been. There's so much, in design. It's insidious, right? Like Jason, I'm an old white male. With all the privileges. And I look around me and I'm almost kind of I feel embarrassed, frankly. And I love that we're having those conversations. And I know we've always, they've been going on for a while, but I want to keep that going. So here's the interesting thing to me is I'm insecure, I'm afraid, I'm terrified of, so I love peace, right? I love being at peace, so I work towards being at peace. But I also love new ideas, which are messy and untamable, and they should be. So my thing is finding that balance, right? And I feel like the key to that is just self-care, giving yourself a break and a hug, right? And empathy, right?
I think self-care and empathy have been such a strong through line today. Kind of makes sense again after the couple of years we've all gone through, but just to summarize for the group here, from our panel, business as usual is dead, is out, or it should be. Embracing chaos and change, and I feel like even earlier today, you can't help it, it's coming. There's always going to be chaos, always going to be change, so if you're able to lean into that, it'll serve you well. Being patient, being kind to yourself, and remembering to have fun always. I'm so down with that. And then, again, Bob, this idea of ownership, I'm also perceiving that as owning your growth, too.
Yeah.
And having tough conversations with people, communities, with yourself as well. And that's it.
Yeah.